Is the stock market going to crash? With some bad news coming out of China, Delta continuing its rampage across the United States, and a year of record highs in the market, but massive job layoffs and death in everywhere else, people are wondering, ooh, is this a recipe for a market crash? And if so, what the hell do we do with our money? I'm Kara, founder of Bravely Go, and I need you to hit that like button to save an investment plan, y'all. Let's talk market crashes. First off, what is a market crash? There's no one specific definition of a market crash, but it's generally defined as a sudden severe drop in market prices. Severe usually means a double-digit drop over a couple of days. So if the market dropped 6% on Monday, 9% on Tuesday, and 11% on Wednesday, we would probably think of that as a market crash. The most recent market crash was March 2020, when Corona made its way to our shining shores here in the United States. The market dropped, and then it dropped some more, and then, hey, guess what? It dropped some more. Why do people think we're due for a market crash? Some people think there are several major red flags being waved in our face, signaling an upcoming market crash. Let's examine those flags and talk through how they might impact the stock market. First, the Hindenburg Omen. So the Hindenburg was a German airship that exploded when it tried to land, and the word has since become synonymous with complete and utter disaster. In the stock market, the Hindenburg Omen refers to a technical indicator used to predict market crashes. When the Hindenburg Omen shows up, it allegedly means that a market crash is going to happen within the next 3 months. And guess what? The Hindenburg Omen showed up in the United States stock market in August 2021. And for the last 40 years, we have not had a market crash without also having the Hindenburg Omen appear first. But if we look at this from another point of view, we can see that every time the Hindenburg Omen has appeared has not triggered a market crash. In fact, there have been quite a few false positives where the Hindenburg Omen has shown up, but there has been no market crash. And this Yahoo Finance article tells us that the Hindenburg Omen has actually only correctly predicted a market crash 25% of the time. So just because the Hindenburg Omen showed up does not guarantee that a market crash is right around the corner. Now that we know the Hindenburg Omen is only correct 25% of the time, let's turn our attention to China. Chinese real estate giant Evergrande Group has been making some big waves in the headlines recently. Evergrande is one of China's biggest lenders. It has $335 billion in assets, and it makes loans to people for everything from houses to cars. And right now, it's staring down the barrel of defaulting on billions of dollars worth of loans. And accordingly, people are freaking the fuck out. A lot of people in the financial world are comparing Evergrande's situation to the Lehman Brothers, which famously collapsed in 2008 and really was the match that sparked the fire that went on to become the financial crisis. The fear here is that since Evergrande is so big and holds so much in loans, if they defaulted on their debts, it would trigger a total meltdown that would be felt worldwide. The US index, the Dow Jones, dropped 600 points on September 20th, while the London Stock Exchange closed below 7,000 for the first time in 3 months, all based purely on speculation about Evergrande defaulting. So Evergrande is already impacting the markets. And I mean, anyone who lived through 2008 and the ensuing years knows how tough it was. The 2008 financial crisis was a disaster from start to finish. It started in the United States, but it was felt all around the world. It lasted for years, and it is commonly pointed to as one of the reasons that millennials are much further behind in building wealth and financial stability than our parents were at our same age. So I do think it's fair to ask, is this 2008 all over again? Are we looking at the next Lehman Brothers, this time just in China? Probably not for most US investors. Most US large investors and brokerages like Goldman Sachs or BlackRock don't actually have that much invested in Evergrande, meaning if it did collapse, these US-based companies would not lose that much money and wouldn't send out huge shockwaves into the American economy. Secondly, and I'm not getting political here, China as a government handles things very differently from the United States. Evergrande is very much so on their radar, and the way that they would handle a potential default would very likely be very hands-on and very swift in order to kind of minimize the fallout. Other than that, I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, so we will just have to wait and see. If Evergrande does completely collapse or does default, it will definitely be felt in the United States. It's just impossible to say by how much or when exactly. Finally, a lot of Americans are worried about a stock market crash because frankly, it's freaking weird that we've been in this now years-long, deadly global pandemic, and the stock market has largely just been breaking record high after record high. With all of the job loss, the death toll, and all of the government intervention, a lot of people simply feel like we are due for a market crash. And before you get all facts over feelings on me, consider that how people feel about the stock market is actually one of the best indicators of a market crash out there. Because when people feel confident in the stock market, they put more of their money in the market for longer periods of time because they're thinking, oh, great, I'm gonna put my money in, I'm gonna make some money, I'm gonna get this back, it's all gonna be good. And when people feel stressed about the stock market, they are more likely to take their money out of the markets because they know it's more volatile than having it in cash, and they don't wanna incur a loss. So if enough people feel freaked out about a market crash, or if enough people are anticipating a market crash, that could in fact trigger a market crash. It would take a lot of people and it would take a lot of money being pulled out of the market. And again, market crashes happen over usually a couple of days, but if enough Americans are freaked out about this, it is something to consider. How should you prepare for a market crash? The time before a market crash is the time to prepare for a market crash. Wow, how many times have I said market crash in this video, honestly? We always have to start with your emergency fund when we're preparing for any type of financial turmoil. I tell people that they should have 4 months of their bare minimum living expenses in their emergency fund, and you should keep your emergency fund in a high-yield savings account. Your bare minimum expenses are things like your rent, your groceries, your childcare, your healthcare, your transportation costs. They do not include things like Casey Musgrave's new album or DoorDash. You can live without both of those things, I promise. Next up, something that I think everyone should do anyway, but definitely if you're worried about a market crash, is get in touch with your risk tolerance. Your personal investing risk tolerance is personal. No one else can tell you how comfortable you're going to feel if the market drops 30% on a Tuesday. So think back, remember March 2020. How did you feel when everything was popping off? Look at the data from 2008. Look at how much the market dropped in a day or over a week. And then apply those numbers to your own money. If you lost 30% of your holdings in a week, how would that make you feel? And more importantly, what actions do you think you would take? Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors of all time, advocates for a buy and hold strategy. And that means buying your assets and then holding them even through the dark times. This is also something that I largely advocate for as well. I think it's a great strategy. I myself practice it. And it's been proven time and time again that if you put your money in the market, you leave your money in the market, it's gonna make it through the dark days onto those sunnier ones. What I always tell people when you're trying to figure out your own personal risk tolerance is to remember that fundamentally the stock market is capitalism in action, and capitalism is the American way. In my professional opinion, the stock market isn't going to go down and stay down forever as long as the US government has breath in its body, right? As long as Jeff Bezos has $100 billion tied up in the stock market, it's not going to go down and stay down forever. But if you don't think that you can practice buy and hold through major market movements, that's something that you need to know about yourself. Ideally, before those major market movements are happening. We've got a link in the description that will take you to our investing course where we specifically have a chapter that walks you through how to determine your own risk tolerance and how to stay chill when there is stock market movements. Because the last thing you want to do is totally lose your head when the market's on fire. You already want to have a plan in place. You should also review your budget now. What would happen to your life if you suddenly had less money coming in? Market crashes are often accompanied by job layoffs. So take this time now when you're still employed, you've still got all your money coming in, to imagine what your life would be like if something about your income changed. What would you cut from your budget if you had to go down to part-time work or if you had no work at all? Now, this can be kind of scary to think about, so if your blood pressure is beginning to rise, take a deep breath, stay with me here. You're considering this now when the market is not crashing so that you can put a plan in place if the market does crash. You might feel a little stressed, but remember, nothing terrible has happened yet, and nothing terrible may even happen at all. All we're doing is putting together a plan that future you can use if they need to. Okay, y'all, well, I want to hear from you. Do you think a stock market crash is coming? Why or why not? And what's your plan to protect your investments and your overall financial life if a stock market crash does happen? And of course, I'd love it if you hit that like button. I'd love it if you sent this to a friend, and make sure to hit subscribe.